I'm very happy to welcome Carla España to the Dean's of Humanities and Social Science office today for an interview for our HSS News Grant.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
I'm very glad you could come. So Carla, I'd like to start with your own educational background before we get to what you do at Brooklyn College and what you do when you're not at Brooklyn College. So where did you go to undergraduate school?
Sure. Yeah, so I did my undergraduate studies at New York University. So I was at NYU, I was local, I was nearby, and I majored in communication studies. And I say that I was a wannabe music minor. I took enough music classes that eventually, if I took I think one or two more, I could have declared a music minor. I love music so much. But I focused on communication studies, and I took an education course, a sociology of education course that kind of planted a seed in me thinking about these issues in education. But then I decided to pursue a Master's of Divinity degree at Princeton Theological Seminary. I grew up in New York City as an immigrant coming from Chile, and the local church community that I attended with my family became our family. And so I had a lot of questions about the role of faith communities in supporting different aspects of our lives. And so I took those questions to study sociology of religion at Princeton Theological Seminary for my master's.
So you had no intent of becoming a pastor?
Oh, no. Well, we had different tracks. So the seminary, so at Princeton Theological Seminary, some people went to the ministry path, and others went into the sociology, we want to go into academia. So my path that I had envisioned was I will take courses also across the street at Princeton University with Eddie Glaude and Cornell West.
And those are people who teach in the African American studies.
Yes, so I had an opportunity. I took a course with Eddie Glaude, who many of you might see a lot on TV and then learning more about what's going on in the US at this time. And that was a great opportunity and helped me think about those questions about communities and how to support people. And there was a nonprofit that I worked at in Trenton where it was part of my requirement. I had to do some community work as well. And I had these weekly check-ins with a nonprofit director to talk about my conversations with families. And in those conversations with families, I would get questions a lot from Black and Latina mothers about how the school systems worked or didn't work, and I didn't have answers. And that made me really curious about maybe my path would be a service to people and our communities through education. And so I started doing some research. I decided to finish my Master's of Divinity degree at Princeton Theological Seminary after taking a course on liberation pedagogies and reading about Paulo Freire and bell hooks and thinking about these questions of education. And I got into the New York City Teaching Fellows program at Hunter College.
And there?
Yes, and there I decided to take up a Master's of Childhood Education with a bilingual extension. And that was a fast track, so it's an alternative preparation program that compared to the traditional ones. And that means that I was a full-time teacher in New York City public schools while I pursued a graduate degree in the evenings. I was very tired. It was very exhausting. But to this day, those students that I started teaching in my education journey began at Don Pedro Albizu Campo School, ESMS 161 in Harlem, teaching dual language, bilingual, and transitional bilingual, two different models of bilingual education. I always quote those students. They are the reason why I do what I do, how I started in this education journey. And as I continue to develop my teaching, and I have so many questions about what's the best way to teach bilingual, multilingual students, especially in a culturally and linguistically diverse community that is New York City.
But you also have a great interest in creative writing.
Yes, and so, well, at that time, it was because and I'll show some pictures of this at our event on campus this week, but my classroom had so many children's books. I'm so grateful that the two administrators I had always said yes to anything I asked for. So I had a lot of books in Spanish, a lot of books in English for my dual And that's where I started getting to know more about children's literature. I took that interest in curriculum and children's literature and questions about the best way to support this community to the Graduate Center. And that's when I got into their doctoral program in urban education. And I focused on bilingual education, studying under the mentorship of Ofelia Garcia. And that's where my journey continued for about 7 years. It took for me to complete my doctoral studies there. And while I was there, I got to really understand more about bilingual programming and curriculum. And I started attending conferences, talking to authors, connecting with authors, and realizing that the world was so much bigger than what a scripted curriculum showed me about the possibilities of what children could read and what children could write. And I'm grateful that my journey started at Don Pedro Albizu Campo School because my principals always encouraged me to attend more of those professional learning development sessions. And I got to know in these conferences, the National Council of Teachers of English was one that I really got involved in. I got to not only meet the authors, but present with them and collaborate on a lot of sessions. And to this day now, where I participate I'm part of the Educational Advisory Council for the Latinx Kid Lit Book Festival. And that started with Latina authors during COVID shutdown when they couldn't do school visits. And so programming is online.
So some benefit out of COVID.
So they thought out of the box, right? They thought out of the box, and now there's a whole Latinx Storytellers Conference that is annual. I attended last year.
Is that connected with NCTE or is it separate?
Well, the founders of it participate in NCTE, but it's separate. The Latinx, it's part of the Latinx Kid Lit Book Festival, and it's in New York, so it's in September. It started last year, but we're having another one this September. And we have authors, we have craft sessions, and really get to work on our writing. So I'm excited to return this September.
Wonderful. So you also taught in Hunter.
Yes,
before you taught at Brooklyn College.
Yes, I love community. So Hunter, because I was a Hunter student, one of my professors who was the director at the time of the graduate the graduate bilingual program at Hunter. Her name is Professor Yvonne de Gaetano. And Professor Yvonne de Gaetano asked me after I graduated, if I could return and teach her a multicultural education class as an adjunct. And of course I said yes, it was my favorite class. So I went back and I was at Hunter as an adjunct for about a decade. And so I taught multicultural education, foundations of bilingual education. And after a few years as an adjunct, I returned as a doctoral lecturer, and then doctoral lecturer when I got my PhD. But I got to teach the student teaching seminar classes for the traditional graduate students who were pursuing an education degree, and then also for this alternative pathway that I was a product of, the New York City Teaching Fellows. I taught their classes as well.
So when you were a New York Teaching Fellow, was that when you were in the school in Harlem?
Yes. So that's when I was working at the school in Harlem, was while I was at Hunter taking my courses in the evening.
So that brings us up, I think, to Brooklyn College. How did that happen?
Well, I was, because I've been doing all this work in children's literature and specifically focusing a lot in representation with Latinx children's literature and looking at translations in Spanish and authentic translations of texts in Spanish of authors that are based in the U.S. One of the former professors who was here in modern languages and literature, Vanessa Perez Rosario, who's now at Queens College, she invited me as an adjunct to teach a course that would be an inaugural course on children's literature in Spanish. And so that was the fall of 2020. So that was a difficult time for the world, and I loved the conversations I had with the students virtually, books that we were reading together in Spanish, and the potential of how we can use these books in the classroom. And that was 2020, and then I decided to take, I believe that year, after teaching at Hunter, I also went to support developing the TESOL graduate program at Bankstreet College. I was there for 2 years, and then I decided to go back to middle school teaching. I miss middle school. I was also a new mom and was looking for something closer to home. And I found a position at a school in Westchester that I was teaching. So I taught 1 year, 7th and 8th grade English, and I was a middle school dean. So just packing my life with with lovely things that also.
You're not that old.
I feel as I go through this, I feel like, let me talk about the wisdom of these years. And that's the year where a position opened here in the Puerto Rican Latinx Studies department, and I thought, how beautiful would it be to do this interdisciplinary work that I try to do in my life in so many different places. So whether I'm National Council of Teachers of English, I was a middle grade section committee member for several years and helping with programming. Then I was also not only teaching middle grade, but I was teaching adults. And so is there a way that I could do it all? And this position with the Puerto Rican Latinx Studies helped me figure that out.
So here you are, and I see that you are teaching a banned books course this semester. Tell me about that course.
Yes, so the banned books course is a course of my heart because it's something that I've been concerned about for several years since we have so much censorship and different types of censorship in book bans. And so I developed this course 2 years ago and thankfully passed. So I'm happy faculty council, everything went through. And this course really looks at picture books, middle grade, and young adult books that have been censored or banned or challenged that are written by Latinx authors. And I not only read these books with my students, but we apply an analytical lens to the reading, which means that out of all the lens we can take, I decided to focus on 3 in this course. So we started with Testimonios, and Testimonios being that rich tradition that we see coming from Latin America of people speaking back to injustice and using their experiences and storytelling to speak truth to power. And now we're looking at how these books are an example of Testimonios. So I had a student just write a paper on a book by Carla España, the Schomburg picture book that's illustrated by Eric Velasquez, who visited our course. So he spoke to our students a few weeks ago. But a student looking at that book as a testimonial. They're now, actually, students, we finished reading The Moon Within, which is one of the most best middle grade books by a Latina author. It's by Aida Salazar, and it features a protagonist who is about to get her period, and her mom wants to do a ceremony and welcome this change in her life, and the child is like, please no, please don't talk about this. But the protagonist Ellie also has a gender expansive best friend, and we go through both of their journeys and how both of their families are so embracing of these changes and how they want to exist in the world. And so students are now applying that lens of Testimonios to the Moon Within novel. And we're transitioning to the Poetex now. We start discussing the Poetex by Elizabeth Acevedo, a novel in verse by a National Book Award winner.
So, what goes on in the classroom? Do you have the students do analysis in the classroom?
Yes.
Or do you lecture?
So I'm very interactive because my roots are middle grade. And my roots are very specifically middle grade workshop. So it's very, very interactive, and I love multimodal text. So even though we are reading these books in the course, my syllabus is full of links with interviews and videos of spoken word poetry for this banned books course. So we start with a very personal reading, more of what are the passages that stand out and why, and how, because the Testimonios lens has been so powerful, how are these books also a testimonial of speaking about experiences that sometimes we notice in our own communities or families are hidden or not spoken of. So whether it's addressing mental health, which we talked about yesterday, or religious trauma, these are things that the students brought up in class yesterday when we were talking about the poetics. So that's the first round of taking the text in. But then we apply the lens, the analytical lens. And that's where we've done some interactive use of Padlet, and students have selected themes that they notice, and in small groups or partnerships, they will identify excerpts from the book on those themes and apply the analytical lens to discuss the book in that way. And so those are some of the ways we started the course, and it's building towards, because of the times we're in and because of, we want to be sure we are using our privilege. I say we have such privilege to sit in a college campus and think and process and discuss, and with people who look different than we did. And so when we bring those experiences to the text, it's such a privilege. I'm so grateful for it. And so we are culminating. This is all going to lead up to these action projects that we want to share with our local partner schools.
So I know that you are interested in writing.
Yes.
And writing is the reciprocal of reading.
Yes.
And that you have written a book about writing in the bilingual classroom. So let's talk about that. What's its name, first of all?
So the latest book is Narrative Writing with Latinx Teens, Testimonios, Text, and Teaching. And that book is the coming together of my experience as an instructor, faculty member in ethnic studies, and as a lifelong teacher. So I brought together my knowledge for those students who've taken my classes, especially Introduction to Puerto Rican Latinx Studies. So that's our PRLS 1001 course, or the PRLS 2005, which is our Puerto Rican Latinx Caribbean Child University course. I bring in that expertise that I have in those topics with my expertise in teaching and reading and writing. And so that means that in this book, every chapter is on a different topic, like migration, immigration, mental health, the narrative of resilience, and that I unpack and push back against.
And why is that?
Well, there's a lot. I have a picture frame that a lovely colleague had given to me in a previous school when I was a middle grade teacher, and it says "Ponte las pilas," and it's something we hear like growing up in our Latinx community, especially if you're an immigrant.
And what does that mean?
It means put on the batteries, like charge up, like just work hard. And there's so much, whether we're studying about the resilience of the Puerto Rican community after Hurricane Maria, or the resilience of these immigrant children, and they,
it feels like a pat on the head.
Yeah, and I think of like Bettina Love's title of one of her books, like "We Need to Do More Than Survive." Like, what if we could just get to live? And that's what I unpack in that chapter and push back against the narrative of resilience. And so each chapter has a multimodal introduction to the topic with a film or documentary or spoken word poetry, followed by, these are all short lessons that teachers can do to introduce the topic, and then could pursue reading these texts or go on to the curriculum, followed by a poetry lesson, then a middle grade lesson with a middle grade literature, and then a young adult literature lesson. So it's like a preview, and all of this is supposed to inspire writing. So the book is full of my own writing. I start every chapter with my poetry and my own narratives from growing up, and every chapter ends with a testimonial, which is some of the experiences of New York City educators that are in my life that I wanted to celebrate and highlight and show how they are also existing in the system and making great impact.
So, has this book been used?
And so it just came out, so the official date was December 30th, and it was just released.
Not
But thankfully, I do have two teachers in the Bronx who have texted me pictures of them using the book. I have a principal who I used to be her literacy coach, East Bronx Academy High School, middle high school, Principal Sprague, who got the book for her whole staff, and so they're reading it as a staff. I think I got it like a week or two ago. And I have one of our speakers for our event this week on the book talk that I'm doing tomorrow. Actually, he's a Brooklyn College graduate and he's a high school English as a new language teacher, is using his book in his classroom. He's also one of the testimonials I feature in the book. He also ended up not only a Brooklyn College graduate, but I taught him at Bank Street when he was my grad student. So we're all connected. connected somehow in this big city. So I'm grateful that in the past 3 months I've been getting texts and messages from people who are resonating with the lessons. And there's been a lot of, I think Miguel, my student, Miguel Figueroa, who is a Puerto Rican Latinx Studies major, he's going to be discussing this tomorrow on the panel, but how the book addresses themes of the Latinx diaspora that the texts are helping him grapple with themes that sometimes in our K-12 schooling are ignored. Or we're all lumped into this very simple group, which we're not. We're a very complex group, and many different languages are spoken under this, the Latinidad or Latinx umbrella. And so that was important for me too, to feature indigenous languages. So I have some indigenous authors there, Haitian authors featured, and really show complexity within this diaspora.
Wonderful. And one other thing, I know that you have begun work on a course that you were going to do in summer of 26 in Chile, yes?
Oh, well, it'll be summer in 26 in Chile, but it's going to be winter. Yeah, so to clarify, it's a winter session, correct? Winter, Brooklyn College winter session, January, 3 weeks. It'll be summer in Chile. We would not want to be in July, August. June, July, August in Chile. Over there is too cold. In June, July, August, very cold in Chile. So this course, it's through the Puerto Rican Latinx Studies Department Travel Abroad Seminar course. And it's going to be 3 weeks on immigrant communities in Latin America with a case study on Chile, thinking about the diasporas in Chile. And so Chile, unbeknownst to many, many folks, is that Chile has the largest Palestinian diaspora outside of the Arab world. Isn't Chile? Interesting. Yes. So we're going to spend a week studying that because it's a huge, part of our population. And I think that's lovely to study history and understand the dynamics of movement. And as a bilingual educator, I'm also thinking about language and culture and identity and what that is like for the Palestinian community in Chile. And the other community we're going to be looking at is Haitian community, and the Haitian community that is in Santiago, Chile. And so the course not only will have guest speakers and scholars who are experts on these diasporas in Chile, but also visits to the local community centers and community organizations that support migrant communities and diasporas in Chile. So I'm really excited about
it. So it's going to be based in Santiago?
Well, we're going to base it in Villa del Mar Valparaíso and do a Santiago trip, because Santiago does have our museum, Museo de la Memoria. We have a lot of local organizations will visit there, but we will base it in the coastal area. And I'm planning a long weekend trip to the Atacama Desert. I just think we all need, a moment of rest and breathing.
Or as you say,
desahogo. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. That's part of my book. It's like that word, desahogo, is to release, right? To unburden, to release. And it was 6th graders in a research study that I did that said that writing for them was un desahogo, that me puedo desahogarme, like I can release myself, I can unburden myself. And that's how they describe their English as a new language class. Right? And I was a researcher just studying this phenomenon. And so that's what I use in my book. I say the framework for teaching writing is, I call it writing for desahogo. So writing for that unburdening, that release. How can you do that when we create these
So it's writing or a trip to the desert?
Or a trip, or we can do both, right? Like I'm doing some journaling, I'm looking at the stars in the Atacama Desert in Chile. So yes, that will be winter session for Brooklyn College, January 2026. It will be summer in Chile.
And are students already signing up?
Well, I was at the Study Abroad Fair, and there were 27 students who signed up to get information. So we all got my email and information. But the application for the winter session it's not due until October. And the application is open in August. So right now, students, I believe this week, maybe today or tomorrow, is the deadline for the students applying for summer study abroad.
So that sounds like a really exciting course.
I can't wait.
And will another faculty member be going with you?
Well, I think everybody wants to join me. Anybody I share this with, I have a lot of So they will be joining at different points. I have as they're able to travel. Most likely, I'm hoping, pending funding and planning, definitely Dr. Lily Sarat from the HSS Institute. We've been discussing and planning this together, so hopefully she will join me. And Professor Mitchell is interested in our Puerto Rican Latinx Studies department as well, who's been helping me design the course. But we have a lot of people interested in joining.
That's terrific. So thank you so much for talking. What do you think are the highlights of your career, which should be noted in a short version of this conversation?
I think one of the highlights is having started my journey as a 6th grade bilingual dual language teacher in Harlem. I think it set me on a path to be much more understanding of our students in New York City. I think another highlight is because I'm an immigrant myself, and I came here undocumented. So a lot part of my whole elementary school journey, I lived here undocumented. I think that gives me a different perspective and understanding of how to support our students and teachers now. And I think the other highlight is being open to continue learning and knowing that I don't know all of the students' experiences, but I reach out to not only listening to students and their testimonios, but I'm using children and youth literature, a lot of youth literature to be my thought partners, has really opened my mind to experiences that I don't have, right? And so I'm really grateful for the authors who are.
And that's, of course, what literature does. It opens the mind to others' experiences.
We need more of that, right? We want more empathy, we want more understanding, we want more solidarity. And so, like when I was working on the Penguin Random House translanguaging collections, which means that I was curating lists with my co-author, Lucia Herrera, we curated list of books that are in English, published by Penguin Random House or imprints under Penguin Random House, but that feature languages other than English. So reading books by Nigerian author Nelly Okorafor, take that Ikenga, it's a middle grade novel and it takes place in Nigeria, right? Open my world. Reading Patron Saints of Nothing by Randy Ribeye, where the protagonist travels to the Philippines, and I learn about the history of the Philippines and dictatorship, and I think about my familiarity with dictatorship in Chile, the history of my family. It helps me think about the world we're in now, and it helps me process how do we speak back to what existence means in this country now, because I'm reading these books that are opening my mind and helping me make these connections.
Yeah. So reading and writing as a way of building community, and I now see why the divinity degree as well.
It's always there somewhere.
It's all about community.
It is.
And you found a wonderful way to express it through the work you've done with young people.
Thank you.
And with college-age students as well.
This is, and in the acknowledgements in my latest book, Latinx Teens, I named my students because I wrote this book in the past year.
Partners.
Yeah, they help me be bold, and that's what I name. I name them, and I say that. Thanks for giving me the courage to talk about these themes in my book.
So thank you so much for coming in to talk to me today.
Thank you for these questions. I appreciate you, and Brooklyn College has just opened so many doors for me.